Rog fans, and today on Rog Science we're talking about time. Professor Brian Cox, what a silly name, on Father's Day did a BBC Two programme, was on a BBC Two programme, talking about time and going through lots of excerpts of his previous programmes about time. The first thing that Rog noticed, because these work, is that in every single clip, from whether it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago or 15 years ago, his hair was identical to how it is today. It hadn't moved. It was exactly the same. Same parting, exactly the same. Not a single hair was out of place. How do you have the same hair for 15 years without it ever moving? We've all had bed hair where you get out of bed one day and you've got a rooster sticking out the back of your head. Why does it never happen to him? How do you have the same hair for 15 years? Unless it's a wig, how is that even possible? Or was it the BBC showing clips of him doing previous programmes simply that, and he actually wasn't, they were restaging them? So that had the Rog all twitchy at that point, like an excited rabbit. What's going on? What's going on? And then he started to basically say things that weren't true. And to quote experiments that are either don't prove anything or are completely unscientific. His first one that he did is he got into a plane and he did Mach 3, went shaboo, and he went from where it was sunset in England to where it was sunrise somewhere else. And he said that the reason that they could do that was because they were going against the rotation of the Earth, and therefore time would flow quicker and he'd get there sooner, which is nonsense. It's complete, isn't it? Absolutely. To quote legendary French Sign Language, it is. That's what it is. Absolutely, and without question. Because this is one of the things that the flat Earth people say is proof that the Earth is flat. I don't understand how it is, and that's the fact it doesn't rotate. And they say the reason that we know it doesn't rotate, because when we look at airlines that go over very long distances, say South Africa to Australia and back again, the journeys are exactly the same in both directions. Now that's actually factual. Doesn't mean the Earth's flat, but it is actually factual. Doesn't mean it doesn't rotate either, but it is actually a fact. You can check that with any airline. If they go to exactly the same place and they make exactly the same stops, it's exactly the same journey time in either direction. It isn't quicker in one direction, slower in the other. So Brian Cox's completely farcical experiment, which is non-scientific, to say if you travel at Mach 3 going against the rotation of the Earth, you'll get there quicker, is complete nonsense, because airlines can't do that. So, and the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, which did Mach 6, that didn't experience that either. Otherwise it'd be common knowledge in aviation, and it isn't. There'd be constantly things, if you're doing Mach 1, be aware of the fact that your GPS might be a bit out because time will be going quicker for you than it is for everybody else. It's complete nonsense. And then he quoted, as though to support his complete and utter nonsense, another bit of nonsense, where about 74, 75, a couple of scientists got an atomic clock, chucked it on a commercial airliner, and they went in one direction, and then went in the other direction, and discovered that when in one direction, the clock was slower than when it's in the other direction. And they said that was the same nonsense, because they were going against the curvature spin of the Earth, and so therefore they'll be getting there sooner, which, as we know from every airline on the planet, is utter nonsense. And this was a commercial airline as well, so that it's complete nonsense. What they didn't do is they didn't perform the scientific experiment scientifically. They just stuck the atomic clock on a table. They didn't put it in a lead box to shield it from electromagnetic radiation, gamma rays, delta rays, Wi-Fi, satellite communications, and all sorts of things, and all sorts of high frequencies that could affect an atomic clock. No, they just stuck it on a table. I mean, that's stupid. It's just completely unscientific. Write that off. And the fact that airlines to this day don't say, please be aware that your clocks will be quicker when we land than when we took off, because it's not true. The other thing, of course, which he completely fails to acknowledge, is that the Earth is insanely large. So because the Earth is so insanely large, if it was travelling at if it was turning at 1,000 miles an hour, 1,000 miles an hour, I think that's 80,000 miles in circumference, if it's correct, is nothing. It's something along the lines of, I think it's about a mile an hour or something. It's ridiculously slow. It's ridiculously slow. So you couldn't perceive it anyway, because it's ridiculously slow. Because it's so huge. So that cancels that. So that was complete nonsense. Why they put that line, I don't have a clue. And then, of course, he just goes forward to dig himself more holes, doesn't he? Because obviously his reputation as a scientist is not important. He then starts using the old turtles on the beach thing. So there's a clip of him on a beach at 4 in the morning, and as these turtles come out to sea to lay their eggs, he says, yes, and their knowledge, and it's their knowledge of time that tells them when to. That's a complete lie. That is a total and utter lie. Classic BBC. Any biologist will tell you that the reason birds migrate south in the winter, the reason that turtles migrate to the same beach, the reason that salmon go up to spawn at rivers to spawn at waterfalls and stuff, nothing to do with looking at a watch and going, oh, bugger, it's March. It's to do with electromagnetic fields, specifically the electromagnetic fields of the Earth. They fluctuate throughout the year at certain seasons, and the birds detect the fluctuations, so they know the seasons are going to change, and then they follow that line of fluctuation, that magnetic field, which then takes them to their destination. And it's the same way that some bats use that as well. And turtles have used that for navigation for years. They don't just get a map out and think, well, we need to go there, but we can't go dead straight because there's an island in the way and then a continent. Or we might want to stop off at Monaco and watch the Grand Prix. No, all electromagnetic fields that guide them around. And currents as well. And the electromagnetic field and the currents. It's a complicated system, but it's detectable. We've proven it, and it works. And when those electromagnetic fields get disturbed by people pouncing about with things like HAARP in the atmosphere, we find birds' migration patterns all go to pot, and they stop going to the wrong places, and then they drop dead. Because it's the wrong temperature. We've proven it. So that is total nonsense. It was just an hour of just nonsense. And he completely ignored the fact that time is relative. Each person, each creature, each planet experiences it differently. And we know that size affects the perception of time. To things that are really small, time goes incredibly quickly. To things that are really big, it goes very slowly. And the things that are big age slower than things that are small. And that seems to be relative as well. It seems as though something that is the biggest creature on that bit of land ages slower than something that is the smallest. And it doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem to be a particular size. Like an African elephant is the biggest elephant in Africa. It's the biggest creature in Africa. And it ages a lot slower than a shrew. Whereas in the Galapagos Islands, the Galapagos turtle is the biggest creature on the island, and it's only probably only about that big, isn't it? And yet that age is slower than the shrews and the other things. And the Komodo dragon's actually the second largest, so they age slower than the other thing as well. So it's relative. And the other thing, of course, he didn't mention is that we invented it. The whole measurement of time we invented. It's our measurement. It doesn't exist in the real world. I mean, classic point. Try and measure a 7-day week in nature. There aren't any weeks in nature. There are only months, seasons, years and years. And we measure them. We can measure the position of the sun in the sky by looking at it when we can see it. If it's overcast, like it is usually in the UK, you're doomed. Hence, we invented the concept of time. So that we could, well, especially for our wage slaves, they can be a wage slavery at the same time. So we can get the most amount of work out of them, take away most of their freedom to make light our own pockets. But also for journeys and stuff. So you could actually go on a long journey. You could actually, both parties would know what time you were going to arrive. Time being a measurement, not a fact. It's just a number system. And why is it sexagesimal? He didn't cover that, did he? Why is it base 60 when we use base 10? There's no logic to that. Why aren't there 10 hours in the morning and 10 hours in the evening? Why aren't there 10 minutes, 10 seconds in a minute, 10 minutes in an hour? Yeah, we created the measurements. We created the distance between the measurements. So it wouldn't make any difference. So why is it sexagesimal? Didn't explain that, did he? Base 60 makes no sense. Also didn't explain why we have a 24-hour clock. How can that exist? And why is there a 12 and a 24-hour? Didn't explain any of that. It wasn't explaining any of this. Didn't explain the fact that the measurement of time can be slowed by passing it through certain objects. If you pass light through certain objects, its speed slows. Therefore, the time, the measurement, speed and distance that it takes to go through that medium is slower than if you take it away. It's a nonsense we invented. It doesn't exist in space. Einstein had his space-time thing. That was hilarious because he dropped a ball, didn't he? When he's made out can be a complete lie, which has stood the test of time as being nonsense. Of the speed of light is the fastest speed in the universe. He said that because it was the only thing he knew of that was fast. He couldn't think of anything faster. He couldn't think of anything faster. Key phrase. Not that there wasn't. He couldn't think of one. So he said that light was the fastest speed in the universe and didn't go beyond it with zero evidence. Now, as far back as 2005, scientists in Sweden and the Scandinavian countries projected sound faster than light. Fact, scientific fact, multiple times, and it was repeated by multiple different scientific experiments in different countries. It was peer-reviewed fact. Sound can travel faster than light. Tachyons travel faster than light. It's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And I couldn't believe he came on the screen and was reading this at a gibberel and trying to tell us it was true. The Earth rotates so quickly that if you go in one direction, it's quicker than going the other. Nonsense. The fact that you can actually become younger by going faster. Nonsense. The measurement used is affected by speed. There is no time. Only clocks exist. As usual, comments down below. This should be an interesting one, shouldn't it, guys? And don't forget, it's not reality. It's YouTube.